Welcome back. Somebody you don't always think about having this ongoing relationship with is your accountant until right about now when you realize, I got about a month and a half till I have to file my taxes. And Boyce, that's certainly not the way you've grown your firm, which I think is almost unique because it's not just the tax accounting. There's the advice that you give throughout the entire year. Boyce Goff joins us again, CPA and owner of GDC Financial Solutions. Welcome back, Boyce.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for letting me be here.
You're welcome. Anytime. You can show up during my show. I will be here. Going throughout the year, people don't always, business owners do, but maybe most people don't think there's a lot of tax strategies throughout the year. They think maybe that last couple weeks of of December, and then in about 4.5 weeks, they're going to start worrying about it again. Where do you kind of go? How do you take somebody through the relationship of an entire year?
Well, we start off, let's say, for example, you came in to see me in, January, February. And you say, my taxes for 2010 were, I'll give you a perfect example. I have a dentist that's out of South Carolina. And he called me up and he says, I just feel like I'm paying too many taxes and my clients, I'm not happy with what my CPA is doing for me. And so the first thing I asked him, I said, well, we needed to run a tax plan. So that's one of the first things we did. So we ran a tax plan for him, which not only looked at last year, or 2010, but then said, all right, what is 2011 going to be like? So we projected 2011, and then we projected 2012, and then said, all right, here's the things that we're going to do for you. Well, 2010, his tax liability was $85,000. 2011, we're going to get his tax liability down to $35,000. 2012, his tax liability is projected at $15,000. So it's that ongoing relationship of looking at your stuff, making sure that the client is following the footsteps that you've given them, or the stepping stones, and they need to just, here's the plan, we need to follow it. And we touch base with our clients at least once a quarter on those kind of situations. And then our big time is November through December, where we're actually saying, let's really review and say, where are you at? What have you done? And now you know exactly what your tax liability is going to be.
So, it's a little bit more forward thinking. I think a lot of people think of accountants, I think I've said this to you before, as looking in the rearview mirror. But, even just projecting out these different dates, taxes go on and on. It's not just a April 15th thing.
Well, if you're in business for yourself or you've got employees or things like that, you've got payroll taxes that are due at the end of every quarter. You've got payroll tax deposits that are due every, 3 days after you pay the payroll. You've got state B&O taxes that are due every month. You've got, all of these various taxes. And so it's not a situation where, okay, let's just, we filed the tax return on April 15th and I don't have to think about it again. No. If you're in business for yourself, you've got to think about all of those things. And that's one of the things that we try to take away from our clients is that constant nagging of paperwork and taxes. So we become the nagger as opposed to that.
You're the nagging, you're the buffer between the nagginess.
That's right.
Is nagginess a word, or are we making them up again? All right. You must have that up already. But you're playing, like somebody's got words with friends going on. They figure, nagginess isn't popping up. Although that's a whole nother story. I'm going to stick with our story. Boyce, when people are starting to look forward, you talked even about like these contributions that people can make. A lot of people's goal is retirement. People's goal is probably not to pay taxes. They don't think every day, I cannot wait to pay taxes.
Well, we do have a few that say, I just love to pay taxes. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. The people who do are the ones who, probably aren't paying very many.
Well, we actually assign them to the local insane asylum. And, anyway, the long and short of it is that when you're looking at that, we've got to sit down and help clients. And there's very easy ways to minimize your taxes legally. I'm not talking about doing anything that's illegal. And as I joke with my clients, do you know the difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion? It's about 20 years.
Right.
So from that standpoint, as we look at a lot of things, how can you minimize your taxes? If you haven't done anything for last year, it's pretty late. However, you can still put money, if you're self-employed, you can still put money into your into a 401k plan. You can still put money in an IRA. And on those, you've got some benefits. The government has come back to you and said, listen, If you get your tax return prepared, let's say in February, and you want to go ahead and file it, you're going to have a refund, then go ahead and file it, but you need that cash to make your IRA payment or contribution. Then you go ahead and file your return, get your refund, and go down to the bank. As long as that IRA payment is in the bank or in the investment on or before the due date of the filing. Not extended, but the due date. Now, if you're self-employed, you got your own Schedule C, or you have your own corporation or something like that, you've got until September 15th to make those contributions, which will then be retroactively applied to the prior year. That's how we're saving this one doctor this much money. He's going from $85,000 to $15,000. That's not a bad day at the races.
Is that a big way of doing? Is it putting the contributions in where they need to go? Is that become kind of the story there? Putting the money where it needs. I mean, putting the money into these defined benefits, or putting them into IRAs, putting them into Roth IRAs. Is that where most of the money is saved? Is by putting the money in certain accounts in order to make it less taxable?
Well, it's not only that. That's what we call deferred taxes, or deferred income, or deferrals. We take that money and put it into those kind of accounts so that we don't have to pay taxes on it until we take it out. Now, there are other things that you can do during the year. Contributions. You can get clothing. We really talk about cash, non-cash contributions, clothing, furniture, off to Goodwill, things of that nature. Those are a very good way to get rid of, clean out the closet, clean out the garage, but get a deduction for it. Okay. The other thing is that you need to understand that taxes are reduced by expenditures. Now, there are certain kinds of credits and things like that you can apply towards your tax liability. If you make under a certain amount of money, and you have children, then there's child credits and child care credits and things like that. There's foreign income tax credits. So you have to look at what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish.
And then you end up having these strategies, and whether it's accountants or taxes, it's also financial planners. I mean, you talk about mortgages, you talk about this network, and in the previous hour, we were really talking about one of those important things to find in a professional you choose to work with is make sure they have a network. And Paul was just talking about that a few minutes ago. What network do they have in order to help, save you money or invest the money, or in Paul and Eileen's case, design and then build the space? I mean, it's a big piece of that.
Well, part of the networks that we have to develop is, CPAs and financial planners and investment and retirement planners and things like that. Is a lot of times, like, for example, you want to do a 401k plan. Well, I have a group that I pick up the phone, I send them a census, they get all the paperwork done for me, they get it back, we implement it for the client, then we manage the investment. But they take care of everything else for me. They take care of the trust. They take care of all that. I don't have to worry about it. You need a will. Fine. I have a network of attorneys that I call up. You need buy-sell agreements. You need succession plans and things like that. So when we structure those, we go to the expert, but I'm kind of the gatekeeper. Well, I am the gatekeeper in that situation. But I go to that expert, and that's why I have to have that network around me.
How did you build your network?
It's kind of serendipitous most of the time. You run into a person. I'll give you a very good example the other day. I've been thinking about our practices growing so fast that I really needed another rainmaker besides myself. And I happened to walk, and I've been thinking about it and who to get, and I've had partners before, and some have been good and some haven't. And I said, maybe it's time I start looking for a partner or somebody else. If I'm not here, what can happen? Well, I happened to go to church and ran into this friend of mine that I've met that is in church that's just moved into our church. And we got to talk, and come to find out, I didn't know this, he was a CPA. Next thing you know, we come to talking, and his philosophy is the same as mine. Next thing you know, he and I are meeting, talking about when we're going to cohabitate. That doesn't sound good, does it? We're going to be.
It's all right. I've done worse today. I've done way worse.
But we're going. How are we going to put a practice together? And actually, to tell you the truth, I haven't been this excited in a long time. So that's one way. The other way is that I go to seminars and I listen to people talk. They're experts in their area. I talk to them. I talk with attorneys at all different times, and I find the ones that think like I do and are entrepreneurial, and so then I extend them. And first of all, I start off and I dip my toe in the relationship. Then I see how they do, and then I give them more and more and more and more, so that we can move like that.
Yeah, well, Boyce, I mean, certainly finding those people to network with is huge, and then making sure that you have that relationship, as well as your client. I mean, it gives, like you said, it's a little bit of that gateway. We just have a couple minutes left before we have to go to break. Anything else that you would, you can hit on as far as what's going on with the, taxes this year?
Well, there's a couple of things to be aware of. First of all, April 15th is not the filing deadline for individuals. It's April 17th. And you got to get that, you got to do that. Now, if you come down to the end of the year, or come down and you don't have the money to pay the taxes, and if it's less than $25,000, and you can ensure that you're going to be able to pay it off in 6 months, then you can do what's called an installment agreement with the Internal Revenue Service and mail that in with your tax return, and they will just automatically send you a bill each month, and then you'll just pay it, et cetera. I recommend you write a check on that as opposed to having them deduct it from your account. But you also need to understand that you'll pay interest and penalties on that when you do an installment sale. Uncle Sam wants their money now.
They got a lot to spend it on.
Yes, they do. The other thing is I would say, if you haven't done it yet, get your stuff together, get in and see your preparer. You need to also make sure that there's some new rules that are coming up from the Internal Revenue Service, is that all paid preparers have to be registered with the Internal Revenue Service. And I think it's by 2013 or 14, all paid preparers. If you're not a CPA or a tax attorney, you have to actually take a test now. If you're not an enrolled agent, too, you have to now take a test to prove that you know what you're doing. So
I can't imagine why that would be a bad idea.
No, I mean, that stops the little shops that open up on Thursday night and close on Friday, and you don't ever see them again. But that's a good thing to know, and make sure that your preparer is doing that, because there's some heavy penalties, towards the preparer, but you just don't want to be involved in that. Yep. So anyway.
Well, Boyce, thanks so much for joining us. You'll stick around. We'll be back in a few minutes to discuss more about finding that network.